All right, welcome to the first chapter entitled Virginity Reimagined. So, I want to start this chapter with a very honest conversation about virginity. Um, there is really no concept that has been more damaging and more dangerous to women than this concept. And yes, it is a biblical concept, and there's beauty in virginity, of course. I mean, this is a beautiful um, concept, but the issue here is the way that this concept has been used to really shame women, demean women, reject women, and sometimes even murder women. And this is a problem. So we have to look here into the full picture that the Bible gives us about virginity. We have, of course, the texts, obviously in the 5 books of Moses, which talk about, virginity as something precious that is, in fact, the sign of a virtuous woman. All of the matriarchs were virgins, beautiful at the same time. We have laws which protect a woman's virginity in the law of Moses. For example, if there is a man who seduces a virgin woman, he then has to marry her. So, the father is honored by his daughter's virginity. In this context, there's still the biblical context. So we have, of course, um, virginity is something that is praised, it's something that is protected, but it's not everything that the Bible says about it. And that's what we often ignore, because our story is also going to talk about virginity, but it's going to talk about a woman who actually has lost her virginity. So, and what happens in this context. So, what's beautiful about our story is that we are dealing here with a woman who doesn't belong to, the uh, she's not perfect woman. She hasn't kept herself pure. She messed up. And she says it herself in chapter 1 verse 6, my vineyard I have neglected. So she acknowledges, I messed up. I neglected myself. I allowed something to happen to me that I might not have been ready to have happened to me. So we have here a woman who is very real and who herself has lost, her virtue, and who is herself now in the story being shamed and judged by her brothers. The brothers are angry. The brothers, of course, in the story represent, the authority of patriarchy. And of course, in the patriarchal context, losing your virginity is an act of dishonor to your father, to your brothers. We remember what happened to uh, when Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, was raped or lost her virginity. Her brothers came and destroyed the whole city because they'd considered that their sister had been dishonored, and they, of course, themselves had been dishonored. We never find out what Dinah really wanted. It's really a dialogue between men. So this is the so we have, this woman here, the biblical story, who now has lost her own virginity, and she's herself being judged as a loose woman, and she resists it. She says, why should I be seen like this among your friends? And eventually, because she's seen as loose, she ends up being assaulted again as she's running through the streets of Jerusalem at night seeking her beloved. She's aggressed and attacked by the watchmen, who also abuse her. The text is very subtle, very, very discreet, but there's this idea of her veil being torn off, which implies an infraction, a trespassing on her female body. So we have here a very real woman whose experience, to be honest, echoes that of most women. And we have to, I believe, if we're going to teach the Bible, understand that the Bible is not just for the select few. The Bible has been written for everyone, including those women who have found themselves neglecting their own vineyard. We have here a message, a story, a wisdom, a teaching for this context. So So the good news is, though, that even though she goes, this is the beginning of the journey of the Shulamit. She begins like this: I neglected my vineyard. She's assaulted, she's judged, she's shamed for having lost her virginity. In the end, there's a beautiful statement, chapter 8, verse 11 to 12, where she says, my vineyard now is mine to give. In the Hebrew, it's my vineyard is before me, which implies that it's mine to dispose of how I want. So we see very clearly at the end of the story that the Shulamite has regained control over her own body. She has reconnected to herself. She reclaims here her own body. She reclaims here her own sexuality, and now is capable not only of owning her own sexuality, but also of offering it up. You cannot offer what you don't own. In the context where virginity can only be taken, where there's no say of the woman on her body, how can she ever offer herself? She can never offer herself. She can only be taken, right? So it's very important. And the Song of Songs acknowledges this. Before the woman can truly offer herself, offer her love, offer her body to her beloved, she has to first own herself, own her body. So we are really here in a context which is post-patriarchal. We are no more in the context of patriarchy with the Song of Songs. Because in the context of patriarchy, the woman's body is not her own. She moves from the father's house to her husband's house. There's never any moment where she is in charge of her own body. The Shulamit here, interestingly, there is no father's house. The father is absent. She lives on her own. And this is why perhaps she's so vulnerable and why it's so easy to take advantage of her. But she lives on her own, and eventually she has to learn, like us, who also live on our own, who also, our fathers are, either absent or far away or don't have a say in our world. We also need to learn how to reclaim our own bodies and how to offer them up again. So it's very important, before one can love and offer up oneself, one has to first have possession of oneself. And this is what the Shulamit is going to learn throughout this journey. She's going to regain possession of her own sexuality, of her own body, so that then she can offer it with consent and agency. So we have this, right, this shift from I neglected my vineyard to my vineyard is mine to give. A shift where we realize she has found herself again, reclaimed her body, reclaimed her dignity, her honor, and I'm going to add her purity. And this is very important. What I'm going to show here in this particular lecture is that purity is not something that can be taken away. Virginity is not something that can be just taken away. We are not a physical object that you can damage. We are something very different. A human being is not something that is static that you can damage. Human being is in constant flux. And we're going to come back to this idea of flux. There is constant renewal happening, by the way, on a cellular level. So I think it's every 7 years, we are made up of completely new cells. So the human body constantly regenerates, heals, renews itself. And so this idea that one's purity or virginity can be taken once and for all is simply neither is it biblical, we're going to see, and neither is it biological. It's not a biological fact. So I want to talk about that because too many of us who have been shamed into thinking that something is irreparably broken, something has been taken away for good. And this is neither a physiological truth, nor is it, we will see, a biblical truth. So let's get into the many ways that we as women can also neglect our vineyards. And then let us follow in the footsteps of the Shulamit to see how we can reclaim those vineyards for ourselves. So the first way that we can neglect our vineyard is if we are living in a patriarchal context. And so this is any woman who is living in a traditional society, whether it's Christian, Jewish, Muslim. It's traditional society where there are certain expectations, certain norms that you have to follow. Things are very scripted, things are very ordered. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, right? There's a lot of safety in patriarchy. I sometimes long to belong to such contexts where things are, well ordered. There is a script, there is a procedure, right, to dating and finding a husband and so forth, and there's beauty in order. I'm all for order. But within that order and this structure, it is very important that a woman, remain a human being in tune with her own agency and her own voice. And again, patriarchy does not mean necessarily the erasing of a woman's voice. It can, but not necessarily. There is room within patriarchal societies for the woman's consent. Very absolutely. Of course it happens that the woman's consent is obliterated, but in many patriarchal societies, woman is asked, "What do you want? Is this okay?" Right? So this is not to say that patriarchy erases the woman completely. Does not. I am not saying also that the patriarchy erases the woman's voice. What I'm saying is that very often the woman's voice is lost. The woman loses her own voice and her own sense of agency. And so within the patriarchal system, it is possible and recommended for a woman to also find herself. So in the patriarchal context, it is very easy sometimes for a woman to lose track of where she is. The expectations are very strong. You need to marry this kind of person, and you need to marry at this age, and you need to and we are going to pick your husband, right, or your wife. And then in that context, once you're married, you have certain roles. As the husband, you need to do this. As the wife, you need to do this. That is your task. That is the script. That is how it is. Again, I think it is possible for a woman to nevertheless blossom within such a context. I don't think rules can deter, I don't think rules are against life. Let me put it this way. I remember the composer Shostakovich, is a Russian composer. He used to actually reduce the amount of notes he would use in a composition because he felt it would make him more creative. And I believe it is very possible for a woman within a patriarchal context, which is quite scripted, to blossom as a woman and to creatively weave a life within this context that is full, that is free, that is and where her agency has space. So, but the key is, of course, we need to be aware that patriarchy can be stifling if we allow it to be. So very often, right, you don't choose who you love, you don't choose what you end up doing, the roles are scripted, and these are ways that the woman can lose herself. And we're going to talk a little later about how that woman can reclaim within this context some breathing room. Now, before we just as modern women think that patriarchy is the only place where women encounter problems, let us look at our own context, right? The liberated woman that we are. We live in a context which I believe is neo-patriarchal. It is a context where male desire still prescribes, is still the norm, is still the script. Let me give you some examples, right? In our new emancipated culture, we as women, or men and women, are both expected to be sexual all the time. If you don't have sex for 6 months, people will be like, "Oh my God, you must be repressed or rigid or frigid, or this is not healthy. You need to, this is a need, like food and drink, right? You have to be sexual all the time." I wonder if that's really right. Must we? Right? So there's the pressure to constantly be on the apps, to constantly be dating. So you stay, so you can cultivate your sexuality. So is this healthy? More than this, we have when we as women, for example, naturally long for commitment, we force ourselves to remain quote unquote chill. I'm quoting one of my students. "Oh, I want to stay chill." Right? I don't want to impose. I don't want to, I don't want to impose my neediness on my partner. I want to be a strong, independent woman. And so we want something, but we kind of don't allow ourselves to want it, or we feel it's not appropriate to want commitment because I want to be relaxed. I want to project a woman who is free. Is this truly what we want? Right? Another way that we are under a kind of script is that, and this I don't think I don't think enough people have thought about this outside of the conservative context, the degree to which it is desirable for our sexuality to be cut off from our reproductive capabilities. As women, physiologically, these are connected. So, to what degree is it a form of violence, subtle violence, that we are constantly separating the two and that we are, in a way, accepting that sex might never lead to children, even though we might want children, right? So we need to ask ourselves seriously, outside of the context of conservative, mindset, to what degree am I okay with this, right? Then finally, we have, of course, when we come to the bedroom, we are very often expected as women in this particular context to look and to act like porn stars, right? Men are imbibed with the porn culture and whatever they're seeing there. And so very often they expect the average woman to bend, to adopt some of these behaviors, right? So to what extent are we comfortable with this, right? So these are all questions that we have to ask ourselves. Yes, we are liberated, but are we? Right? Are we really? Or are we following yet another script which is still catering to male desire and not necessarily to female desire? Right? We have to be critical also of where we are today, not just of patriarchy, right? So these are just questions. Again, a woman might answer all of these questions differently, but I invite you to ask these questions for yourself, right? How sexual do I want to be all the time? Am I really okay with just being chill? How comfortable am I with constantly separating love and my reproductive capabilities? Um, do I really want to be a porn star? So these are all questions that we can ask ourselves and try to tune in and am I here following a script, or is my vineyard here truly mine to give? Okay. And finally, of course, another way that we neglect our vineyards or that our vineyards are infracted upon, is through sexual trauma, through sexual aggression. And this is where, of course, you have, worst case scenario, it's a rape situation. Best case scenario, it's your boyfriend, right? Or trying to force something on you. I have many, many stories of my students being um, forced by ex-boyfriends to have sex or to do something with them. So there are many or sometimes it's just the pressure is such that one woman will finally relent. So whether it's rape or just pressure, it's still the same. There is still here a way that our vineyard is not fully ours to give, right? This is where the notion of consent is very important. But we'll see that to have consent, something else is needed, and we're going to look at that. But now you can see a little bit how it's kind of a dark picture, I'm sorry, that I just painted, how it's not just in the patriarchal cultures where the woman's agency and consent might be threatened. It's also in the culture that we live in now as liberated, emancipated women. We can also, without knowing it, follow a script which caters much more to male desire than to female desire. And finally, of course, there is a sexual trauma. So the question, of course, is, and if we want to learn from the Shulamit, she has been through all this herself. How did she eventually reclaim her vineyard? And how can we ourselves also do so? So let's look a little bit at how the Shulamit navigates this. So the first thing that is needed, which I believe is what the Shulamit is teaching us, is for us to connect to our hearts. We have lost the connection to our hearts. We are connected to scripts. We are connected to what society is telling us to do, whether it's modern or patriarchal. We are following a script, most of us. And we have forgotten to connect to our hearts and to feel what we should be doing. We are disconnected from our feelings, because we have been told that women are emotional and women are hysterical and women, are hormonal. And so we have been told over and over again throughout the centuries, ever since Aristotle, the Greek philosopher Aristotle, who taught that women are, uh, emotional, and because they're emotional, they're weak and they cannot control their emotions, and therefore they have to be controlled by the man. Is the same idea, all the way to today, where somebody will ask you, are you hormonal right now, or are you on your period because you're crying and you're angry, right? No, we need to come back and take our bodies and our feelings as women seriously. In spite of all the things we have heard against our own emotions, we need to realize that our emotions, our feelings, are wise. What we have forgotten over the years, when we have tried to be rational, when we have tried to be strong, when we have tried to be independent and stoic, we have forgotten that we have lost touch with our own embodied wisdom, which is in a way transmitted, expressed through our feelings. So, which means that to the degree that we can listen to our feelings, we are connecting to our wisdom. And the Shulamit is a genius in this. The Shulamit is just bursting with all kinds of emotions all the time. She is extremely connected to her emotions. She is joyful, rapturous, she is anxious, needy, she's clingy, she's, never angry. It's interesting, right? She's never angry, but she's sometimes sad and sorrowful, longing, regretting. So you have so many emotions bursting through um, uh, this character. And by the way, this is typical of wisdom literature. In many of the wisdom books, remember I mentioned that this is a whole school of thought within the Bible. The wisdom books, for example, the book of Job, Daniel, Ruth, Esther, Lamentations, and then all three books by Solomon, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs. These books are also infused with strong emotional flavor. There's a lot of emotions and feelings bursting forth in these books. You have, for example, the book of Lamentations, where the prophet is weeping. You have the book of Ecclesiastes, where the king is raging against God and against life. You have the book of Job, where you have also this despair, this hopelessness. And then you have the Song of Songs, where you have this, joy, ecstasy, sorrow, anxiety. So it's interesting that the most emotional books of the Bible are the wisdom books. Why? Because wisdom is connected to the heart. In the Hebrew worldview, wisdom is not the brain. It's not the brain that is going to give you wisdom, it's your heart. And to the degree that we're connected to our hearts and to our feelings, is the degree to which we will be connected as women to our embodied wisdom. And so let's look at what that looks like. Let's go back to our three scripts that we follow: patriarchy, what I call neo-patriarchy, and then the sexual assault or trauma, and see how we can here follow our feelings. So when it comes to patriarchy, again, I'm not recommending, leaving your society, your community, but there is a way within that context to find freedom. And this is when you are in tune with your feelings. For example, imagine you are presented a match, a prospective husband. Of course, this has been done through a matchmaker sometimes, or your families have decided, and you're going to go on a couple dates with this person. And the person looks perfect on paper. They do. Your families are very, they know each other for ages. Everybody is happy with this match. But as you go on the date, something in you is feeling anxious, uncomfortable. Listen to these feelings. I had a best friend. She was dating this man, and she was tired of being alone, so she was really wanting to make a decision, and she was hesitant. There was something stopping her, but then she overrode the hesitancy, because in her mind she was like, I'm not staying single, I have an option. I'm not going to be like these single women who stay single till 40 or 50 or 60. I have to make a move. And so she overrode her feelings, the hesitation she had. She married, and now just recently she has shared with me that they're getting a divorce for very, very profound reasons, which her feelings were already sensing. Right? So it's very important, and it's okay. In the context of patriarchy, you can come to your family and say, listen, I know he's perfect or she's perfect on paper, but I'm getting this uneasy feeling, and trust me, your feeling is tapping. It's an intuition. It's tapping into something that no one is seeing, but that you're sensing. And so it's absolutely legitimate in the context of patriarchy for the person to say, I'm not comfortable, let's bring the next match, right? But listen to the feelings, they're wise. Now, moving further, in terms of career, right? Very often in traditional societies, there's a script there too. And sometimes the woman is, in fact, there's no career in store, right? The career is marriage and children. And for men, there are some specific careers also that they ought to follow. Again, trust your heart. What do you enjoy doing? What excites you? What are you doing all day long for fun? That is your career. Do you love to read? Do you love to paint? Do you love children? Do you love, right? Do you love to, put band-aids on people? I don't know. These are, again, connect to the heart, connect to the feelings. This is written in the script is within you in the context of patriarchy. And it's very possible within patriarchy to negotiate, right? It's hard sometimes, but it has been done. It's not impossible. Depends on who your family is, right? So that's the first way, right, to navigate, to reclaim one's vineyard, even within the context of patriarchy. Now, within our context now, which I call neo-patriarchy, this is also possible, right? We need to start asking serious questions. We need to stop thinking uncritically that we are free. We need to ask ourselves, am I really free? Or am I also following a script? And this is done by, how comfortable. Let me try to ask myself, do I really want to be on the apps all the time? Do I really want to date every weekend? Or does my heart need rest? What does my heart tune into the heart? What does the heart truly long for? Does the heart need rest, some time apart to process, to heal? Or is the heart excited about doing this? If the heart is excited, go for it, right? But if the heart is hesitant, tired, sluggish, listen to the heart, take a break. This is important. I always tell my students, if you're single, great. This is the moment where you can heal, forgive, give grace, purify yourself, work on yourself, gain wisdom. These moments, these breathing spaces are important between relationships, so you can, heal and also gain wisdom. So here's another one. How comfortable am I in inviting this man into my apartment now? The man is right there. He wants to come with me. Do I hesitate? If I hesitate, why let him in? Right? Or do I feel, oh, I'm gonna look stupid if I don't let him in? So again, are you hesitating? Say you're a man and the woman now is saying, hey, you need to put a ring on it. Do you feel comfortable with that? Are you excited about the prospect, or is something in you listen to that feeling? It's so important at every stage of the dating scene to check into the heart. Am I ready for sex, or do I want to wait? So what if, the script is saying that I'm, crazy, right? If the heart is prescribing, I'm not ready yet, don't be afraid to follow. That's your wisdom, right? So do you want to take things slower? Do you want to slow down? Are things moving too quickly? You can always slow down. It's always possible to take a step back. Don't think that because you went this far, you can't take a few steps back. You always can. It's always possible to take a few steps back, take a breather, move more slowly. So these are ways that we reclaim our vineyard, even within this so-called liberated society. And now I want to address the issue of sexual trauma. This is especially tragic when the person who's been violated or raped or so was a virgin, because in this context, not only they have the trauma of the violence that they endured, but they have the shame and the rejection. If they are within a conservative society, they will be stigmatized, even though it's not their fault. And there is this notion that, well, it's over for good. You're scarred for life. I've heard this over and over again, right? That, this is the language, right? You are damaged goods, or you are tainted wine, and so forth. So there's really a whole semantic field of insults when it comes to losing your virginity. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the biblical concept of purity, because we have too often merged the patriarchal culture of the Bible with the will of God. We have to distinguish, we have to be aware that the biblical text, yes, is an inspired text, but it's also a cultural text, which is permeated by the cultural context of patriarchy. And we have to be very careful. And this book is helping us, because the Song of Songs is a subversion of patriarchy. By this book, we know that the biblical text was never meant to be a patriarchal text. The patriarchal culture is not the will of God necessarily. There are good things in patriarchal culture, which I think God would approve of, but God is not to be reduced to patriarchy. And so I want to look at the biblical concept of purity, which, by the way, is found in the patriarchal texts of the books of Moses. And I want to talk about this because too often we think, oh, I've lost it forever. I'm always going to be damaged. This is going to be a scar that will, I've heard this will never leave me. I will always carry this into the next relationship, and I will never have a truly pure marriage, etc., etc. So, and these are all things that are said in order to instill fear, still in the context of a fear-based sex education, which I don't believe is the biblical approach to sex education. So let's look at this. Indulge me, and let me go into a very obscure book of the Bible called the Book of Leviticus. There's a particular passage there which is extremely profound for what we're about to talk about. Now, Book of Leviticus is one of the books of Moses. It's basically a treatise on purity, what is pure, what is impure, what makes you pure, what makes you impure, and especially it's a treatise on how to regain purity once you have been defiled. Just that should tell you that purity is something that one can regain. And I want to argue, so is virginity, because virginity has been so merged with purity, right? We talk about purity culture. I want to keep myself pure, i.e., I want to stay a virgin, and then, be only with my husband. This is all merged. So I'm going to go and say that if you can regain purity, you can also regain this virginal self, this undefiled self, completely pure. This is what the treatise is saying. If we can regain purity, there's hope. Now let's look at how this happens. So there's an obscure moment in the text which talks about the cleansing of a vessel. Okay, so the vessel has touched, let's say, a corpse, so now it is impure. And so how do we cleanse such a vessel? And so the book tells us, well, if you put the vessel in running water, like a stream or like the ocean, the vessel will be cleansed and the water will not become defiled. So both will remain pure. So the water will not only remain pure, but it will cleanse the vessel. Now, if you put the vessel in stagnant water, water that has no outlet, that is stuck there, both the vessel and the water are going to become impure. So that's the rule. That's the very obscure passage. So you will ask, well, what's the connection? Well, I would like us to see the woman's body like this running water. When the water is running, whatever you put into that water, whatever defilement occurs, this defiled vessel comes into the water. The water is supposed to be defiled by this encounter with defilement. Yet the water, because it is running, not only remains pure, but it cleanses the agent of defilement. However, if the woman's body is like stagnant water, whatever happens to her will make her impure and will also cause her to make others impure. So let's look at, what does it mean then? Suppose you have been defiled or have this encounter that has defiled you, that has demeaned you. This source of pollution has touched you. How do you become running water as a woman? That is, I believe, the key to not only remaining pure no matter what is happening, but to purify everything and everyone around you at the same time. The key to remaining running water is to, when this has happened, the sexual trauma, is to learning little by little to love again, to open your heart again. If you harden your heart and tell yourself, I will never love again, you are becoming the stagnant water, so that whatever will touch you will make you impure. And you'll have to protect yourself and live on a high mountain where nothing can touch you, so that you can, maintain yourself pure. But here we have something else. We have the invitation at your own pace. This is not something a woman should do right away. Once you have been traumatized, you have to withdraw. You have to close the heart. You have to create boundaries. But if you stay in the boundaries and in the closedness, the water will become stagnant, and there is danger then that whatever will touch it will reopen the wound. And so the key here is to learning little by little as a woman who has been traumatized to love again, to forgive, to give grace, to express love. I tell people, okay, you've been through heartbreak. You can't love, obviously, a man right now or a woman, but I don't know, love your nephew, your niece, love your parents, love your friend, love your plant, love a pet, get a cat, right? Love something. Allow yourself little by little to flow again into the world, even if it's just a plant or a pet, and continuously align yourself with love. You feel a resentful thought, you feel you hear yourself, hardening yourself, you refuse to forgive, release, give grace. As you choose love over and over again, aligning yourself to love, you are becoming again this flowing spring, which at that point, nothing can ever defile again. You are safest when you love. You are not safe when you're protecting yourself. Because when you're protecting yourself, first of all, you don't exist, you're not alive, right? But then anything that touches you is defiling you, because you are stagnant water. The safest way to move in the world, to not be defiled or damaged or poisoned by the people around you, is to run like water, is to allow yourself to continuously come back to love. As you come back to love, not only can nothing touch you, nothing can damage you. Of course, you can be hurt, but it doesn't mean you will be poisoned. It doesn't mean you will be defiled. Nothing can demean you if you're flowing with love over and over again. And not only are you then protecting your own purity, but you're purifying everyone and everything around you. That's the key here to recovering one's lost purity or virginity. A woman is virginal when she is able again to offer herself. My vineyard is mine to give. She's able again to offer her love. That is the sign that she has forgiven, she has given grace, and she's ready to love again. At that moment, that woman has become again a virgin. She loves virginally. There is no baggage, there is no hidden resentment, there is no, repressed anger. This is what makes love impure. Not the fact that, something was taken away from your body. We are not objects, right? What makes your love impure, what makes you an impure lover, the loss of purity, is the allowing of resentment, hardness, poison to inhabit us. The moment we release those and choose love, we regain our original virginal selves. And the Shulamite is a master at that. She goes through so much. She loses her virginity. She is assaulted by the watchman. Her lover is a very difficult man, as we will see. And yet she continues to flow. In spite of all her suffering, there she is in the fields, loving her life, loving nature, grateful for her man. She is teaching, offering wisdom to the daughters of Jerusalem. She's constantly grateful and finding things to love. She loves her life, past, present, future. That's what will keep us clean, pure. And this is how I would like us to reimagine virginity. I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.